Our primary focus obviously swimming. However, we did a lot of cross sports. I mean, that was part of actually of that sports system. We played quite a bit of soccer. That was probably the primary sport that we played outside of outside of swimming. But we did a lot of cross training as well. So there was a lot of we ran quite a bit. We actually lifted weights at 9, 10 years old. So the pressure and the intensity was pretty high at a very early age.
And you obviously had natural athletic ability. Did you do you think you could have exceeded in other sports? Perhaps not quite to the same degree as swimming, but as a natural athlete, did you aspire to playing other sports? Were you any good at other sports?
Yeah, I do think I got athletic gene. So any sport that I took on, and I played high school basketball. I'm a pretty good tennis player. I was a good soccer player. So I think if I would have pursued any sport, I feel like I would have reached pretty good heights.
Amazing. You were an all-rounder, right? Clearly, which is amazing. Now, you mentioned the sports system, right, in the Soviet Union, which certainly we in the West had experience of, because it was always the Russians and the East Germans and allegations of drugs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In addition to the pressure that 9, 10-year-old kids were put under. If the Soviet sports system had anticipated that you would have been a 4-time Olympic gold medal winner, do you think that they would have allowed your family to emigrate?
They probably wouldn't have allowed it to immigrate, but we also have to remember that whole system fell apart when Soviet Union fell apart. So there is no real sports system there.
Right.
In fact, a lot of Russian athletes train overseas and then go back to represent Russia. So it's hard to predict what would have happened, but I can tell you that my coach, and he was a great coach, and he was one of the assistant coaches on the national Soviet Union junior team. Eventually, when the system fell apart, he had to go and basically work at a port, unloading like on a dock, just unloading.
Wow.
Ships. So everything fell apart, really.
And transitioning to the US, why did your family decide to emigrate?
Well, I mean, immigrated to get away from the anti-Semitism, for more opportunities, better life. Obviously, my parents wanted to give everything to their children. I have a younger sister. She's a couple of years younger than me. It was an opportunity to bring us to America and give us a chance to dream big and try to achieve our dreams and goals here.
And how difficult was it to get out at the time?
Well, the process, and I remember not in great detail. It was because I was still pretty young, but obviously my dad went through a lot of through the process of applying to get a political asylum. And obviously, being in Soviet Union, we had to say that we were going to Israel. Being a Jew and seeking political asylum. And then when we got to Vienna is when we really decided. We knew all along we were going to the United States, but leaving Soviet Union, we had to say we were going to Israel. And then in Vienna, we went one way, and those that were going to Israel basically went directly to Israel. We ended up going to Italy for a couple of more months after Vienna, and waited in Italy until we had the interview with the U.S. Embassy, at which point, we had the interview and they allowed us to come to the States.
And so you came to the States. Did you speak any English when you came to the States?
No, I didn't speak any English at all.
Okay, so you were 13, 14, you came to English, you spoke, strange country, completely different culture. And there you were, thrown into high school, thrown into a community, I think in LA. You came to LA?
Yes, I did.
All right, so tell us a little bit about that transition. I mean, you must have felt that you were in a completely different world.
Well, I certainly felt like I was in a completely different world. I mean, there's a huge difference coming from Soviet Union to Los Angeles, obviously. So it was a big change. Language was probably one of the biggest challenges. Not being able to speak the language. I remember one of the criteria that my dad was asking our friends that invited us, because everyone, you needed a sponsor to invite you to come to the States. And my dad wanted to make sure that our friends found a swim team right away. So literally, I think we arrived on March 14th, and like by end of March, I was already swimming in the swim team. And I remember being on the team and people, I was obviously this new kid from different country, and they wanted to talk to me and ask all these questions. And I just couldn't, I couldn't communicate. I couldn't say two words in English. So it was a bit challenging for sure. But I will say though, we settled in West Hollywood, which was a melting pot of certainly for the Russian immigrants or immigrants from former Soviet Union. And so going to junior high and then high school, I had a lot of friends that were in a similar situation as me. They were all immigrants that recently arrived to the US. So that made it just a little bit easier, at least just to be able to find few people in school that spoke the same language. But everything else, it was big unknown. And also my parents, I mean, I think they struggled a lot more than I did, just being able to assimilate and find jobs and speak the language. And, especially from my father, it was definitely very tough to find himself here.
Oh, I'm sure. But you found swimming, right? So tell us how important that was in, allowing you to integrate a little bit and, have friends and so on.
Yeah, obviously, like I said, I found swimming. I originally was swimming in Santa Monica College. They had a age group swim team. So I was living in West Hollywood and I was commuting to Santa Monica to go to practices. Now, my parents were working, so I was basically on my own at that time, just going by bus from West Hollywood to Santa Monica and then training and then coming back. But I can tell you, I mean, to this day, it's been over 30 years now. And I can't describe how welcoming people were at that swim team. And they knew that my parents didn't have resources to take me to swim meets on the weekends. And I remember coaches would come pick me up, or parents of some of my teammates would come pick me up and take me to swim meets. And it was incredibly warm, incredibly welcoming. And, I remember, like I said, it's been over 30 years, but that's still really clear in my mind. And, it's certainly it wasn't an easy journey every day going to Santa Monica and then coming home late in the evening and not really knowing why I wanted to do it. So that was hard. And I would say until I actually decided to switch teams and ironically joined the swim team at the Westside Jewish Community Center, which was about a year later, that I started to feel a little bit more comfortable just being in the sport and continuing swimming.
And so you joined the Westside JCC. Presumably your family were involved in the Westside JCC. So how important was that, not just from an athletic perspective, but a social perspective as well, right? Because again, I just can't imagine as a 13 or 14-year-old kid from a completely different country, right, being, dropped into an environment that was so alien to him or her. And yet somehow, some way, it clearly assisted with your whole integration into American life and then the sport in particular.
Yeah, I mean, JCC was the Westside was a big part of actually those first year or two when we were settling in. I remember we went to a Purim Carnival at the JCC. I would say maybe a month or two after we arrived to Los Angeles, and it was so eye-opening. It was so incredible, just warm and welcoming. And and the community was incredibly welcoming. And so it left quite a mark on my whole family. And you know, a year later, I joined the swim team there, and it was always like, for me, it was always home, just coming in and being part of the team, and just the staff that worked at that time, in aquatic staff and administration, which years later I became good friends with people that were, you know, in administration of the JCC. And, you know, I'm still really good friends with my coach, Steve Becker. It was certainly years, relationships that I started then, that I have continued, you know, now 3 decades.
That's wonderful. And since 2004, you've obviously been very busy. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your life post-Olympics, and what you're doing now, and particularly the role that you're playing in developing what we hope will be future generations of Olympians.
Yeah, you know, it's so, after I retired, 2004 games, I decided to open Learn to Swim academies. And as I was putting a business plan together, you know, with Learn to Swim Academy, the important thing is to find a pool. And it's not that easy to find a pool in Los Angeles, or a pool that is not used. I mean, that's always the we say in kind of in the swimming circles, the water is always a scarcity. So and ironically, you know, of course I went back to my old stopping grounds, to the JCC, and was so fortunate to connect with Brian Green. Brian is right now, who is the executive director at the Westside JCC, and was at that time in 2005 or end of 2004. And I approached him with a business plan. At that time, the pool wasn't operational. And I told him, you know, I have this vision, and I think the potential is incredible here. And I just simply wanted an opportunity. And I've always, the word opportunity is really big for me, because I've always looked at anything that I have encountered in life, it was about opportunities, including, you know, my athletic career and obviously professional career. And, you know, we took it both, we meaning myself and Brian Green and the board took a chance on this idea, this concept of the Learn to Swim at the JCC. And we started in 2005, and now we're 16 years later. And I'd like to think we've made a tremendous impact on so many young lives over the, 16 years. And it's all been about water safety. I think that's really important. For me, it's I've always enjoyed impacting life of others, and I've been incredibly fortunate to be able to transition from being a professional athlete to doing something that I love doing, continue to be in the sport, impact others in such a positive way, and at the same time also, being able to make a living, which is really special.
Well, if I may say, I think that you're a blessing to our entire community. And what strikes me is the level of humility and desire to give back and impact the lives of others, which I think is so powerful. We're now going to, open it out to questions. Leah, do you want to? I see Jerry's got his hand raised. Right, before we even asked for hands to be raised for questions, but that's okay. Right, he jumped the gun, as it were, as they would say in athletic circles. So Leah, over to you, and if you want to ask for Jerry to go first, that's great. If not, we'll have other people.
Jerry, you're number one.
So Lenny, this is first of all, it's an honor to meet you, and I've always been, for many years, thought it's very highly of you. I got a question. It may sound stupid, but I've always wondered it. When you're swimming on your back and you're swimming as fast as you possibly can, and it's time to end the race and you're finishing, how do you not crack your head open on the side of the pool?
That's a good question. That's not. I've been asked that question many times. Have you ever noticed the flags that are above the pool?
No.
There are flags 5 meters from each side of the pool, and those flags are specifically for backstroke. So it tells me that the wall is coming in 5 meters. So obviously for me, I knew that 4 strokes in, the wall was coming. So if it was a turn, so if I was going into the turn, I would know that I need to do 3 strokes and then turn on my stomach to get this turn going. If I knew I was coming to the finish, on the 4th stroke, I would kind of launch into the wall.
Thank you very much. Now I know.
Right, and so Jerry, you'll remember that next time you're swimming on your back in a pool, right?
Yes, I would need Lenny because I'm not a great swimmer.
So I imagine you just work with kids, Lenny, correct?
Yeah, we work mostly with kids. I mean, well, again, there are a number of adults that come through the program that we teach water safety. And again, there's a lot of adults that don't know how to swim or have fear of the water. So we certainly teach everyone how to be water safe. That's really is what our mission is.
There you go, Jerry. Anybody else have a question? I'm looking for some hands.
Avi. I think Avi has a question.
Yes, Avi.
Well, as the people that know me, Lenny, it'll probably be more of a mini speech rather than a question, but maybe I can somehow work a question into it, you know. But I learned how to swim at the Westside JCC 60 years ago, and we all got a kick out of the fact that it was called a natatorium because no one had ever heard of the term natatorium, and I still hadn't heard of it. So I love the fact that you, at least for a while, you kept the name natatorium. I have no idea where that came from, but I love the idea that you've resuscitated that because there are a lot of people in my age group. That's where we learned how to swim, and it was just a great place to do it. And I remember the locker rooms downstairs. So, so thank you very much for resuscitating that.
Thank you. Thank you. Avi, was Sid Shapiro there by any chance? Do you remember that name?
Nope.
Okay. Because I know that Sid was there going back to the late 60s.
Mr. Gary, he was there with me.
Paddle boards and everything.
All right. All right. I saw Peter and then Mark Samuel and then Rosa.
Yeah, we just want to say hello directly from the swimming pool.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, look at that. They're in the back there.
In the
There you go,
preteen.
by the small pool. Very nice. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Lenny. My son grew up here swimming since he was 3.5, and he's now 12, going on 15. And we're just so grateful for having you in our community and for everything that you do. We much appreciate all of your
Thank
hard
you.
work.
Thank you
I
very
know
much.
it's been difficult 1.5 years, and I believe that you're going to rebuild it the way you wish. And we are so happy to have you here, and we'll continue to support you any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So cool from the pool.
Great.
All right. So let's hear from Mark.
Hi, Lenny.
Mark.
Nice to meet you. I'm just really impressed by your story and your experience. Actually, my parents are from the Ukraine as well, and I'd like to consider myself a swimmer. I swim a little bit in my spare time. One of the questions that I have for you is, it's just been fascinating to kind of watch the progression from the swimmers over the years, and they seem to get faster and faster and faster. And like, you know, from Phelps to Caleb, what are you seeing the difference between, I guess, you know, from 20 years ago, 30 years ago to what's happening now? And why, you know, I'm trying to get a sense of how, you know, how are these athletes just getting faster? Because it's just fascinating just to kind of watch them in the swimming pool and just break these, you know, astounding world records. So,
Right. Well, that's a really good question. I will tell you, it's actually interesting. I think that the top are getting faster. I don't think the depth has gotten a lot faster, which is very interesting. But I will tell you, first of all, technology. So the suits are very different now than they were 20 years ago, and they make a huge difference. So I, in fact, 5 years ago, so in 2017, I went to the Maccabi in Israel, and we did this exhibition race between US Olympians and Israeli Olympians. And it was myself, Jason Lezak, Anthony Irvin, and we had one more person, Alex Blavatnik. He was not a professional swimmer, but a master swimmer. And we raced Israelis. And I put on this suit that they wear now. And that was the first time I put it on since I retired. And I could not believe the difference it makes. So it just basically what it does, it lifts you up. So you ride higher in the water. So there's less drag. So you move through the water faster. So that is, I think that has been a big part of it. The other is just training is different. It's a lot more race specific training. So back in my days, it was all about volume. The more, the better. The old school mentality, the way coaches train, the more you train, the faster you're gonna swim. That's not really, the science have proven that that's not the case. In fact, a lot of the athletes, the more you train, if you don't recover properly, you're actually gonna get a lot worse. So there's a lot more focus on rest and recovery. And you see that across all sports nowadays. That's a big reason why performances have gotten better, because there's more scientific approach now, how to train and how to recover. I also think diet has played a big role in just current athletes are looking how to be the best they can be in every facet of their lives. Back in the day, I'll be honest with you, I didn't care. I could eat 6,000 to 7,000 calories. It didn't matter. I trained 5 hours a day. You know, out of 5 hours a day, my heart rate was over 160, probably 3.5 of those 5 hours. So it didn't matter. Now it's smarter because diet does have a direct impact on your recovery, on your how effective you're going to be in your next day training. So, and that accumulates as you go through your seasonal cycle and preparing for your whatever competitions you have going on. So I think those two are what has, took the sport to the next level.
Thank you very much. Just curious, how much were you swimming in a week? Not, how many yards were you?
Yeah, I'll tell you. We were swimming probably about 70 to 80,000 yards a week. It was a lot.
Yeah, I swim about 15K, so it's but it's nothing like that.
Yeah, but a lot of times now, a lot of swimmers swim 15 and swim very fast.
All right.
Question.
Okay. I was wondering, when you mentioned that at this Olympic, there weren't the fans rooting and shouting, and well, maybe I'm weird, but I prefer it when it's quiet. I myself, I don't like all the shouting. I prefer the quiet myself. Now, are there other people that? So what if the fans weren't shouting? They liked it better that way. I think the shouting makes it harder for me. So I was curious about that.
Yeah, I think it's more the energy that you feed off of, and I think the energy of noise, at least that I've experienced myself, it raises your adrenaline, it raises the excitement, and that's how I look at it. But again, everyone is different, and I can tell you that I'm sure there were a number of people that appreciated being quiet. And because that's what it takes for them to perform at their best. So I'm just speaking more from my personal experience and from some of the conversations I've had with the athletes that took part in the games a couple of weeks ago.
Right. So I have a question for any kids on here, or really it's just for anybody. What advice would you give to kids who want to accomplish a specific goal, be it win a gold medal or become a scientist or learn to surf or whatever? What advice would you give to accomplishing that?
Well, I mean, anytime I talk to kids, and I also think it applies to adults. I really think it's important to have goals. I think it's so important to have a purpose, waking up every day with a purpose of what you're trying to accomplish. It's important. So when I'm talking to young kids, it's all about setting goals, and goals could be long-term and goals could be short-term. And understanding that in pursuit of goals, you're going to have ups and downs, and that's just normal. You just need to stay the course and continue on the path to achieve those, whatever goals you set for yourself. But even, and just as important, I think it's so important that you do it from the bottom of your heart, that you're truly passionate, because if you're pursuing something that you have big aspirations, it's impossible to do it if it doesn't come deep from your heart, if you're not giving it your all. If you have to force yourself, it's so hard to achieve your dreams and your goals. And I talk a lot about that anytime I encounter conversations with kids, that you need to do it from the bottom of your heart, and you need to set goals. And another thing and it's for me personally, I think it's so important to do it with a smile on your face. I really do. Even through the heart, even through pain and challenges, I think the smile brings the right energy that continues to feed inside of each of us. And I found that to be effective in my own career, whether it's in sports or in my business career as well.
I love that so much, Lenny. I agree with you wholeheartedly that having a sense of purpose and passion or heart, as you mentioned, for what you do is a game changer. It took me until my adulthood to find that. And it was just a game changer when I tapped into that. But so we have Gabe and then Barbara.
Lenny, you're a huge inspiration, and this has been great. Thank you so much, and love watching you in the Olympics. So my question is this: you ever gone head to head against Phelps?
I have, yeah. We swam together probably in 2003, and he beat me. We swam 200 backstroke one time. He beat me, but again, he never swam my event quite a bit. We swam 200 backstroke, but it was a pretty close race. I don't think, I had quite a challenging 4 years between 2000 and 2004. I had 3 surgeries. I was injured pretty much throughout that whole quadrennial between the games. So I don't think I believe I didn't swim Michael in my best.
Right.
However, I experienced Michael up close and personal. We were roommates in 2004 Olympics. So I can tell you that he is truly one of a kind when it comes to handling pressure, because to be able to handle the pressure of winning 6 medals that he won that time, or 8 in Beijing, that I just can't even describe what that feels like. First of all, I don't know, but to be able to be on every single day during the Olympics when the world is watching, it's tremendous. I mean, and I saw it firsthand, and it's just really one of a kind. You don't see too many people be able to achieve things like that.
Well, he had a great mentor in you to look up to, man.
I think he certainly. I mean, we got a decade age difference. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have Barbara, and then maybe time for perhaps one more question. One or
Hi.
two.
Hi, Barbara.
I owe the JCC actually before you came around a lot, because my daughter swam on the swim team from the ages of 6 through 9, and it was just wonderful for her to have something to push her. It also was a nice babysitter for me, because I'm a doctor and I would finish work at 6:30, and she could get dropped off there from school, and she did well. But I have actually a technical question for you. When I was young, and I'm an old lady now, I swam in a swim team, and I swam backstroke. And our pro or our teacher taught me to bring my arms as I brought, instead of the way I see it now and the way I had originally been taught backstroke, with the arms going up and out. He taught me to take them out, bring it up and out. Has anybody ever done it that way as long as you've been swimming, that the outward as opposed to the directly overhead kind of? I'm just curious because everybody seems to go overhead. And when I first started swimming, that was the way I learned.
Yeah, you're still supposed to carry it up, and then you push out once your hand enters the water.
No, I'm talking above in the air out.
No, we still swim it. Well, it's still going straight up.
Yeah.
It's still going straight up. Yeah. So that's still the
I don't
best
remember
way.
anybody ever telling you to take it out.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, time for maybe one or two.
Monica.
Monica.
Yeah.
Hi, Lenny. First of all,
Hi.
as a parent of children who have benefited from your swim school from the age of 2 till they're now 7 and 8, so I want to say thank you, because it gave us a place for them to feel safe and learn, and then they are part of J Camp and they felt safe in the pool, having been part of the program. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, I like what you said about finding it deep inside, some, a goal. And as a parent of young children who express interest in a certain sport, and then maybe they get turned off to it or they get scared. And there's always a fine line of like, do we push the child if we feel like there is hidden potential? What's your take on seeing athletes who were maybe pushed versus who really wanted to do it? I feel like that's a big conundrum.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So I was definitely pushed a little bit by my parents, but mostly came within. But I do think, especially when kids are young, I think it's important to let them try as much as possible. Because I don't know how much you follow sports and how much you followed some of the top well-known athletes, but a lot of them did multiple sports until they were about 12, 13. Mm-hmm. And then they started to specialize. I know that there's such a pressure right now, just the society pressure to put your kids in one sport and do all these privates and do all these extra trainings. But I think what happens, you run a risk of potentially just overdoing it early on, and then they could just shut it off. I can tell you, I have my personal experience with my daughters. They were rhythmic gymnasts from age of 4 until about 13. And that's all they did. Part of it is because rhythmic gymnastics, it's an early sport and a lot of time commitment. So you don't have really a chance to do multiple sports, because if you do other sports, that sacrifices rhythmic gymnastics, and then the coaches look at you, they just don't give you the same commitment, right? Because you don't make that a priority. So, but then at 13, they came and just said, that's it, we're not interested anymore. And at 13, it was too late to start any other sport if you wanted to do it at a competitive level. So I think keeping it, not overdoing it and not overbearing, and giving him a chance to try multiple things, it's so important. And the key is not to succumb to that pressure of outside pressure of friends and just what you see on TV, what you see on social media. It's because you want eventually for it to happen naturally, because naturally is what's going to give you success. what's going to get you to a point where you don't have to say anything. It's like your kids are going to say, Mom, I need to go to practice. I can't miss practice, things like that, because it's coming within.
Yeah, that would be a dream. Thank you so much. That's wonderful advice. I appreciate it.
Lenny,
Yeah.
can I just ask you a quick question, if I may? Were you able to follow that advice as a parent yourself, right? To remain
Yeah.
relatively detached? Because you know what? I found it impossible. And I'm sure that a lot of parents standing on the sidelines or in the stands found it really, really difficult to be dispassionate.
Yeah, because I knew, I think there's a really fine line, and I knew I needed to be very careful because well, listen, I also grew up in a system that was so intense at such a young age. And I can tell you, I left Soviet Union when I was 13. My class, my swim team was that specialty class. It was 30 of us. I left at 13. By 15, I think 28 of 30 quit. So it's just, there's a very fine line. You need to let kids develop, and you can't overdo it. And I think if you see most that have achieved great heights, I think the specialization starts around age of 13, 14.
I'm thinking also, if you put so much into sports, you're too tired to do your homework, and you're too tired to practice your violin or your piano or anything, because we have kids that not only do sports, their parents give them music lessons, they're supposed to excel academically, and I can see where you don't have the energy, that nobody has the energy to do well in everything. A lot of times something falls by the wayside. So,
well, yeah, and Rosa, I agree with you on that. And again, I think that's the important part. I think that putting a lot of pressure generally is just simply not healthy. I also, in my personal opinion, putting too much pressure and all the stress that kids go through in school, in high school right now, I think I don't know how healthy it is. I really don't know, what's the value of kids sleeping 3-4 hours at night? We know how important sleep is for health development, for brain development. A lot of these kids are sleep deprived through high school. I'm not sure what the benefit of that when they're 25, 30, and then they get into their adulthood. So there's a lot of pressure all around. And I think that's the important, is how do you balance that? It just had, to me, I always talk about it has to come naturally.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your life wisdom tonight, Lenny, and your generosity of time. And really, again, it is such a treat to have you on here. And as always, Ingram, thank you for stepping up as our moderator. But we absolutely wish you the absolute best. And if anybody knows any kids who would like to swim, obviously Lenny's school is top notch, so please refer. And thank you so much, Brian Green, for partnering with us on this, the Westside JCC. And I guess that's all, folks. Ingram, did you have anything you wanted to say in closing?
Just to thank everybody. Hopefully we'll do this again with, we've set the bar here. This was outstanding. So again, Lenny, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to, maybe watching your swim team on TBS. Lenny and I were talking a little earlier, right? And there's an international swim team competition that's taking place right now. And I think you said the LA Kerns.
Kern, like a wave.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
The LA Kern, and Lenny is the general manager of this team, and they're going to Naples fairly soon to take part in a swim meet, and it's on TBS and CBS Sports. So we'll be watching and rooting for you. So thank you again so much, and all the very best to you in whatever it is that you do.
Thank you everyone for joining, and thanks for great questions, and wishing you guys all the best. Thank you again.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ingram. Thanks, Leah.
Leah.
Bye, Lenny.
Bye, Brian.
Good night, everybody.